true, and the beautiful with the simple truth of Jesus Christ and His holy Catholic Church through Scripture, tradition, and the Catechism. And now, your host, Jim Havens.
It is great to be back with you on The Simple Truth, where we proclaim the life-giving reality of Jesus and His Catholic Church. We consecrate everything to the Sacred Heart of Jesus through the Immaculate Heart of Mary and the pure, strong heart of Saint Joseph. It is Wholeness and Healing Monday, fighting to cultivate the health of the whole person, mind, body, and soul. Our co-host is my lovely wife, Becky Havens, a Catholic wife and mother with a passion and calling to educate people about the importance of caring for our bodies that the Lord has blessed us with by living a healthy lifestyle. She's also the author of Toxin Free in 12 Months, a 12-month guide to help you transition over to a toxin-free lifestyle. And she wrote a boycott list of over 300 pro-abortion companies. You can get them both for free over at her website, safehavensmama.com. Becky, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Good to see you.
Excellent. All right. Well, we've got a very interesting topic today. At first glance, maybe not the most exciting of topics, but actually, once you start digging into it, pretty interesting. And we found out from our morning survey that people are interested in this topic. Got a lot of responses today. Our topic today, are pesticides a problem? Are pesticides a problem? So we're going to be talking about pesticides today. Also, I've got a spiritual analogy to pesticides that I've been thinking about. I'm going to drop that on you at some point here. We're going to open up the phone lines as well. If anybody has any strong comments on pesticides or any questions you want to get in today, we'd love to hear from you. And also up front, we do want to give the disclaimer. We're not doctors. We're not scientists. We're just regular people looking to live well, raise our family. We believe in objective truth and asking questions when things don't make sense. We're not giving medical advice. We want to simply offer a forum here today. We might know a thing or two, but there's a ton we don't know. We've got some personal experiences, and so do you. We'd love to hear from you. Again, we'll put that phone number out in just a little bit. But we did put out the morning survey via email. If you want to get on that list, if you're not on the list, you want to be on it, thestationofthecross.com. Go to The Simple Truth, scroll down, put your email address in. You'll get this morning survey every Monday morning on our topic, so you can participate this way. And so we asked the question, do you use pesticides? Becky, what do you think? What do you think the majority said? Yes, they use pesticides. No, they do not. What's your guess?
I have no idea. I feel like everyone falls somewhere different on this. And I was pretty passionate about it, especially when our kids were a lot younger and playing outside a lot. So it was a big thing for me, but I don't know. I feel like it's probably a pretty good range.
Yeah, it was a close vote. And 53% of respondents said no, they don't use pesticides at all, apparently. So Becky, that leaves the question to your experience. Do you use any pesticides? And I think the answer is probably no to this. I'm in charge of the lawn care in our family. I know that I do know, unfortunately. Although, no, I take it on as a task that ought to be mine. I don't enjoy it a great deal. And one of the reasons why I probably don't enjoy it as much as I could is because I don't use pesticides. And so the pursuit of trying to make the lawn look better and better, well, you're kind of limited if you're not going to be using pesticides or artificial substances to some degree. So anyway, that's my gripe on pesticides for me. But Becky, do you use any pesticides?
No, sometimes when we're desperate, we will use some ant killer that I is a whole long list of warnings on the side, but they're so invasive. I don't know. I've tried every natural way to kill those red ants. It's not the same as black ants down here in Florida. So we do not use pesticides on our lawn. Actually, Florida prohibits the use of pesticides for I think about 4 months. Throughout the year, because they know that it's not ideal. It definitely wreaks havoc upon us as humans, but also the wildlife here, and all that filters into the lakes and the streams, and they know that, so they do limit that, which is good. But yeah, I have to say we don't really use it. Our lawn is not the most beautiful, but I feel like it's worth it, not having all of that stuff on the kids since they're outside. I mean, if we didn't have kids and they weren't going through the grass and we weren't, we didn't have a dog, and it might be different, but your pets are bringing in the pesticides, it's getting on them. And like we know, there's studies all over the place that many of the pesticides do cause cancer and other issues. So yeah, I'm a strong no on pesticides at this point.
All right. Well, sorry, a little voice issue there, but I guess the point here being is that that's one good lady's observation and argument, perhaps, for not using any pesticides. But we also had 47% of respondents to our survey who said, yes, they use pesticides. We followed up. We asked them, if so, what do you use them for? And this was interesting. This fell into two categories as I saw it. Basically, one reason is in order to cultivate things. So things to be cultivated, good things to be cultivated, such as lawn, shrubbery, roses, garden. Those were some of the responses. And then also things to be eradicated or controlled in the pursuit of those things that they're trying to cultivate. So these some of these things to be eradicated or controlled: weeds, insects, algae, fungus, invasive plants, rodents, ants, wasps, hornets, fleas. One person writing about that dog collar that the dog wears to keep the fleas away. So basically, pesticides here being an intermediary to cut off those things that threaten the good that you're seeking to cultivate. So that might kind of beg the question, can we find something to do this that is non-toxic, or is the only way to be effective in this area to find maybe the least toxic option? Is that what we are bound to do here? But Becky, I want to ask you the question. So these are good people seeking to do something good here by using pesticides. Don't you want a nice lawn or a good, effective garden, or at least don't you want to avoid fleas on your dog or being swarmed by mosquitoes so you can sit outside and enjoy a nice evening sunset, a gentle breeze, smell of the bonfire, taste of some s'mores, kids running around with sparklers? You don't want to kill all that joy by being afraid of pesticides, do you?
No, you have to find the right balance for sure. But I have found that you can find like a low tox way for almost everything. And so if I can find that, I feel like it is my duty, especially towards my children, because toxins are rampant. They're everywhere. So if I can limit their exposure, I know I can't eliminate that. But if I can limit that and keep it low, I feel like it's my job to do so. And so, my job as a mom is to research the alternative options and see what works, see what I can find. And I found some pretty good alternatives. So I feel like, as long as we are seeking out the best of what's good for our families, I think that's what's important. Can we avoid pesticides and things like that? Definitely not. They're everywhere. But there's definitely some great options. I mean, even, I'll just name a few that I kind of found, or some that I personally use are, you can do companion planting. So certain plants you can put near other plants that will keep bugs away, especially for different types of flowers. So this is what we've done to keep different kind of like insects away from some of our vegetables. You can do what they call soft chemicals, which is soap or stinging nettles, rhubarb, different alternatives to pesticides that act as a pesticide, but it's not going to, affect your vegetables or your garden or your lawn in a toxic way. Some people bring in other predators, like I guess ladybird beetles and birds. If they have an infestation, that's an interesting way to do it. And then essential oils, we've done a lot of this. Rosemary, eucalyptus, geranium, thyme, lavender, lemongrass, citronella can all be helpful. I think this is more of a small scale. If you have a huge garden, I don't know. That's going to get expensive and it's very time consuming, but these small things have helped for us personally. And there's even like organic weed killers out there, organic soil stimulators that, can help the pH, and even using your own grass clippings can help to fertilize your lawn. So, simple online searches, there are better alternatives. I think because I've seen studies that there is some really aggressive side effects from pesticides. That's one thing that I just kind of really wanted to try to avoid. I mean, if you live in a community where they spray, and I know that we've lived in lots of places where they've sprayed, there's nothing you can do about it, but we don't at this point. So I'm kind of going with that and making it work for us in that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And just by way of follow up, and really, this is interesting. There's a lot about this I don't know. You're telling me there are people, they will bring in a certain type of beetle into their yard in order to do what? They will what? Try to eat some of the mosquitoes or something? What are they trying to do here?
Well, people actually bring in lots of, like, if I don't know if you ever heard of a bat house, like they bring in bats to the yard to eat all the mosquitoes. That's something that was popular up north. And yeah, they'll bring in like a species of beetles, and it will kind of go around and kill a specific gnat. I mean, that's probably what they did in the old days. You know what I mean? And the fertilizers are fairly new to us, so there's different ways. Yeah, for sure.
Wow. Fascinating stuff here on pesticides, and we're going to get into some of the dangers of pesticides, some of the alternatives as well. Are you concerned about the use of pesticides in your community? Not just your own personal choice, are you going to use them or not, and to what degree, but what about in your community? How much of a say do you have there? If the dangers are high, shouldn't you have some say? If you want to call us and let us know what you think, any questions, comments today, 1-877-511-5483, 1-877-511-5483. A spiritual analogy coming up when we get back. Stay tuned.
Here at the Station of the Cross, we proudly bring the truths of the Catholic faith to countless listeners through radio and mobile devices, and we're grateful for the feedback we've received.
I discovered the Station of the Cross rather providentially a year ago and have been a loyal listener ever since. I can't overestimate the value of the station, what it's made a difference in my life in terms of making me better informed Catholic. It has enriched my faith and told me during tough times. It made me laugh on several occasions. I commend the important work of this great apostolate.
I'm a stay-at-home mom. I listen to the radio, and if I can listen to something that brings me closer to God, closer to Jesus Christ, then it's the most beautiful thing.
If you've been blessed by listening to the Station of the Cross, let us know. Call 1-877-888-6279, extension 112. Then share your testimonial with us.
We've lost the vocabulary for spiritual struggle. You know, when the more draconian elements of the COVID interruption were rolled back, there are a number of dioceses whose rallying cry was, it's time to come back to the table. No, it isn't. It's time to come back to Calvary. Not even the Italians say we've sinned, let's eat.
The Catholic Current, 5 p.m. Eastern, from the Station of the Cross and on the iCatholic Radio mobile app.
The Station of the Cross began broadcasting in Buffalo, New York in 1999. Since then, our listening areas have multiplied and expanded into several states. While our mission is to grow the Catholic faith through radio and other media outlets, our apostolate is supportive of, but independent from your local diocese. Through your generosity, we are able to inspire countless listeners with the gospel and help lead them to a parish to be spiritually nourished by the sacraments.
Simple Truth. Jim and Becky Havens here. Wholeness and Healing Monday, fighting to cultivate the health of the whole person, mind, body, and soul. Our topic today, are pesticides a problem? Give us a call if you want to bring a comment or question into the show today. 1-877-511-5483. That's 1-877-511-5483. And before we get back into the topic at hand here, just want to give a little clarification as well. One of the reasons that we do this show, this fighting to cultivate the health of the whole person, mind, body, and soul, Wholeness and Healing Monday, is because as well-formed Catholic folks that we're called to be, hopefully we're well-formed, hopefully we have an ongoing formation that is getting stronger and stronger that leads to a more rightly ordered life. And so there's a matter here of the intellect, all right? We want to be filling our intellect with truth. We want to be lovers of wisdom. We want to be good philosophers, good theologians. We want to have an understanding of reality so that we can navigate reality well. Certainly, Jesus is at the very center of that. Jesus and the Catholic Church, his Catholic Church that he died to give us, that he could gather us all into one, pour himself out in the sacramental life and have us to be filled with his divine grace. And so, all of the topics that we're hitting on, they all do go back to, look, we can look at these things in a Catholic way with a well-formed intellect, and it matters. And so as Catholics, we ought to take the lead in all sorts of issues and be kicking these things around and have a good forum on them. And that's why we're doing this show on Catholic radio. And thanks be to God, the Station of the Cross gives a platform to do that. Again, are pesticides a problem? Might not seem like the most spiritual of topics, and yet there is a spiritual aspect here. I tried to dig into this some in my own mind, and I want to try to lay that out for a moment here. A spiritual analogy with regard to pesticides. So things that we're trying to cultivate in a spiritual way, right? We want divine grace in our souls. We want natural and supernatural virtue. We want a life of fervent prayer, a zeal in loving God and neighbor, in fulfilling our vocations and the good works that we're called to. And then also at the same time, in order to bring about those goods, there are various things that we want to see eradicated and controlled in our lives. We want to eradicate sin, error, false teaching, vice, concupiscence as much as possible, untwist what has been twisted, this inclination to sin that is so natural to us after the fall, even after the grace of baptism. We want that untwisted as much as possible so that we are free from this inclination, at least to be able to fight against this inclination where it resides. So we want to be able to at least control it, if not eradicate it by God's grace. Temptation, we want to be on guard. We want to avoid the near occasion of sin. We also want to eradicate and lessen distractions, right, from all those good things we're trying to cultivate. So do we have an intermediary, a pesticide, if you will, to cut off those things threatening the greatest of goods? And we do. And guess what? There's nothing toxic about it. But it's actually a great good in and of itself. And this is what I came up with when I think about the teaching that we see in the lives of all the saints, the greatest theologians, the church fathers, the authors of sacred scripture, and that is mental prayer on the object of Christ crucified. That is the pesticide of sorts to cut off all of these negative things and help us to cultivate all of these good things. I think that really gets at the heart of it. Again, meditating, giving our attention to Jesus Christ and Jesus Christ crucified. There is the love of God revealed for us. There is our calling of who we are called to be in him, to offer ourselves in love with him to the Father. And so that's going to rightly order so much and help us to eradicate and control so much that is negative and cultivate so much that is good, the greatest of goods, divine grace, more and more alive in our soul. So that's my spiritual analogy. Maybe you've got one that's a bit different, something that you want to speak to on that. You can do it by calling in 1-877-511-5483. That's 1-877-511-5483. In the survey this morning, we asked folks, are you aware of any particular dangers of pesticides? This is where it gets really interesting when it comes to the survey responses this morning, Becky. Almost everybody said yes, that they're aware of particular dangers with respect to pesticides. But if you remember, 47% of those, almost half of those, said that they're using them anyway. So I guess those who say yes, they're using pesticides, and at the same time they understand the particular dangers of pesticides and they're still using them, they're making the calculation that whatever the danger is, it's still worth it. Anything that you want to speak to on that, Becky?
Yeah, I think it's just, everybody's going to have their particular choice that they want to make regarding that. I think because it's allowed, sometimes we need things to be banned in order to take it seriously. Look at something like abortion. Like, people just allow it to go because it's legal. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean that it's right or good. And I think even something small like chemicals is, banning chemicals is something similar. Like, you use cleaning products all the time that have toxic chemicals in there that are carcinogens, that are going to be dangerous to your health. And over a long period of time, you're going to see effects of that. But people kind of think they expect people to protect them. And the truth is that these companies are not protecting us. And so that's why it's so important to, be the researchers ourselves and advocate for ourselves and our families. Because nobody's really looking out for us in these areas, and it's up to us to kind of be the ones to change that. And so there are a lot of people coming out and saying, like, why are you putting this in our products? Like, why are you spraying our food with this? Why are you doing this? And there's enough people actually that, laws are being made and changes are happening, especially in certain states like California, which will ripple through and affect us as well in different states. So that's good. But it is our duty to at least know everything and then make the decision from that, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wonderful. If you want to call in, 1-877-511-5483. That's 1-877-511-5483. Again, on this question of are you aware of any particular dangers of pesticides, a couple of responses here. One says yes. Carcinogens and PFAS, forever chemicals. I'm not familiar with that term. Becky, anything you want to speak to in terms of forever chemicals, PFAS?
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty much in everything. They call them PFAS. It's, they're in our personal care products, our makeup, they're in everything. I mean, people get tested and they're in our bodies. They're in the umbilical cords of newborns. I mean, so they're in our environment, and what they're finding is those type of chemicals they stay with you forever. It's very hard to detox them due to their chemical makeup. And so what we want to do is just minimize as much as we can, and things like this. I mean, the weed killers and that, if they have that in them, then that's just more and more. I think the thing with this is it accumulates over time. So if you go out and you use weed killer, a few times a year, okay, that's fine. But if you're using this constantly daily, if we're exposed to so many things over a long amount of time, but constantly, like hundreds of chemicals a day, like that's why our bodies are failing to a degree. That's why all these, at least this is my explanation. This is not factual. This is what I've come to the conclusion with. And you get a really toxic body burden. Your bodies aren't meant to, detox this much, and you get sluggish, and it's difficult. And then we have all these health issues. And so minimizing what we can is important, just as Catholics, to just care for our body that God gave us. And, that's just kind of my opinion on it, but I know everybody's different.
Yeah. Anonymous in Snyder, New York had this to say: it is my opinion that they are pesticides harmful to people and pets. Why else would the people who do the applications be outfitted in heavy rubber gloves and boots? And why would signs hopefully be posted where these chemicals are applied? Anything that smells and tastes so bad cannot be good. They are designed to kill. I had a smaller dog that died a terrible death with 2 types of cancer in spite of all my efforts to keep him out of harm's way, and I attribute it to lawn chemicals. After the last heavy rain, the odor from the chemicals could be smelled in the air for 2 days instead of the refreshing smell of the rain. Becky, any thoughts on Anonymous's account here in Snyder, New York?
Yeah, I've definitely experienced that as well. I remember being in Pensacola once, and the parish was right next to a big baseball field. And for 2 days, the parish smelled so bad. And I've never smelled anything like that. And I finally asked somebody, because we were newer to the area, and I said, what is that smell? I mean, it's disgusting. And they said, oh, they just sprayed. They spray the whole thing every few months. And I'm thinking, okay, there are kids playing on these fields all day long, every day, and that's what they're using. I mean, there's going to be an issue with something that's that toxic that you can smell for days in open air. So she's totally right. I mean, there's dangers. We know it, we see it, but I think we just need to know what can we do about it, and how do we actually minimize, because it's everywhere. It's everywhere, especially in neighborhoods where, and when we were in Rochester, the guy would come and he would spray like all the yards around us. And I'd tell the kids to come inside because it smells, and he's in his mask and his boots. And like she said, and the gloves and they're spraying and you think, okay, I can just go on my grass. That's okay. And they're like, no, wait a day, wait 24 hours. And if you have no rain, like what's 24 hours going to do? It's just going into the soil. And if you're gardening, that's going to go into your plants, and it all means something. So yeah, I completely agree with that.
It sounds like a great opportunity for some smart entrepreneur to come up with an effective, non-toxic way to really scale some sort of way of doing this, right? That they could then approach various municipalities with this plan and say, look, this is effective. It's just as effective. It's totally non-toxic, and it's going to get to the solution that you're trying to get to. And by the way, it's a little bit cheaper. Why don't you do business with me? What's the problem with that? Is it not that there's no alternative that is able to be non-toxic and also as effective, or maybe it's not as affordable? Maybe the toxic versions of things are going to always be more affordable for whatever reason. What are your thoughts on why we haven't seen a better solution come forward?
You have to remember who's in charge here. And if you go back to 1970, before weed killers became that popular, you had a Monsanto scientist, John France, who started using glyphosate, which is actually the main chemical in Roundup, and it boomed from there. They said it worked, it was cheap, and it became the most widely used weed killer in all of the world, actually, worldwide for sure. And I think in the 90s they realized all these issues are coming from this, and what happens is Monsanto then has become humongous. They control everything regarding this area. And so I know we're hitting a break here, but basically they can squish the small guys because they have a bigger agenda going on there. So it's a whole thing, and I don't think it's some conspiracy theory. I think it's out there and the information's out there, but that's why it's up to us to just make the small steps in our own homes and what we can do ourselves.
Mm-hmm. And these big companies, they certainly could try to come up with a better solution if they wanted to. It does make you think, why don't they want to? Why don't they have any sense to want to protect people more and come up with better solutions for these things? Things to think about. If you want to call us, 1-877-511-5483. We'll be right back.
Please join us in a prayer to our guardian angel. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. O holy guardian angel, take care of our soul and body. Enlighten our mind that we may know the Lord better and love him with all our heart. Help us in our prayers so that we may not give in to distractions. Assist us with your advice so that we may see the good and carry it out with generosity. Defend us from the insidious snares of the enemy and sustain us in temptations, that we may always be victorious. Remedy our coldness in our worship of the Lord. Cease not to protect us until you have brought us into paradise, where we will praise our good God together for all eternity. Amen.
Think about this. There are 5 freedoms guaranteed in the First Amendment. Freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom to peaceably assemble, freedom to petition the government. Which freedom can you live without? Fortunately, the First Amendment doesn't make you choose. It protects all 5 freedoms equally. Think first. Go to thinkfirstamendment.org to learn more.
You can listen to any of our network-produced programs at your convenience, wherever you enjoy podcasts. Hear a powerful sermon you need to share with a loved one? Maybe there's a guest or teaching segment that deserves another listen. You can find all of our shows on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, our website, and the free iCatholic Radio app. Be uplifted in your faith. Listen today at thestationofthecross.com or on your favorite podcasting platform.
Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with my wonderful wife, Becky Havens, and she is also the author of Toxin Free in 12 Months, a 12-month guide to help you transition over to a toxin-free lifestyle. Also wrote a boycott list of over 300 pro-abortion companies. Get them both for free. Learn more at her website, safehavensmama.com. Today on Wholeness and Healing Monday, we're talking about are pesticides a problem? Getting into that. And so if you want to call in any question or comment, 1-877-511-5483. That's 1-877-511-5483. About to go to the phone lines, but first just want to say was also thinking in the break about that spiritual analogy. And certainly whenever we're thinking about Christ crucified, what goes always together with Christ crucified? And that's the fruit of his sacrifice, and that is his gift of himself in the Holy Eucharist. So I think that also obviously is very fitting as well. The more time we spend in front of him in the Holy Eucharist, and even if we can't get to the tabernacle or to Eucharistic adoration, but it's just a meditation on how he has given himself for us on the cross and in the Holy Eucharist, that's always going to be a fruitful meditation for us if we really take the time to give our attention to it. So it's going to help us to ward off the things we don't want and to help us to cultivate those greatest things that we do want. Let's go to the phone lines now and bring in a special caller here, Joanne Wright, co-host of our Wednesday show, Wonder and Awe Wednesday. What a privilege to have you call in. I'm sure you have a great question or comment for us. What's up today in New York, Joanne?
What's up? Well, we just had our lawn sprayed, and she's got me thinking. But you know, a show like this, I can't help but think the mistakes I've made. You know, Jim and I have made. You know, just with these little things. You know, we want a nice grass. We want nice green grass. We want to look good. We don't want the neighbors to think we're, not taking care of our lawn. You know, it's just dumb things that you do it for. And thankfully, my kids have grown up mostly healthy, but I can see in all of them some of maybe the side effects of the junk between vaccines and weed killer. And my basic question was that atrazine stuff. And I had heard years ago that, this stuff is making fish lose their sexuality or something, male fish or frogs were turning into females or whatever. I thought, what a joke. That's just an excuse, for people to say you're born in a certain gender or whatever in a sexual orientation. But now I'm beginning to hear things, how disruptive it is to hormones, and it may really be the case that our young girls and young boys are getting all kinds of toxins and hormone disruptors because of this. I mean, can you talk anything on that? I missed the first part of the show, and I hope you didn't talk about this already. I didn't want to repeat, but it's been making me a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for the call. No, we haven't talked about that. In fact, it's an area I'm not familiar with at all. I don't even know what that is. Atrazine. Becky, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not super familiar with that either, but I do know that there has been studies linking, like hormone disruption with certain things like, and I'm not sure if it's specifically weed killer or if it's, the stuff what they do is they farm fish. Maybe that's what you're talking about. And the different chemicals they use to farm fish, basically if you ever bought fish, it says we use this, not wild caught, it's farmed fish. And it's just like these big nets they have located in different spots in the ocean, and they control the fish there, and they give them certain foods and chemicals to make them a certain way and a certain color and everything. And there have been studies that link things like that to hormone disruption. And it's no wonder that, I saw a study about this actually just recently, and I can't pull it up right now, but I do know what you're talking about. And to Joanne's my mom, so I'll call her mom / Joanne, her point about in a way it is vanity to a degree. We want our lawns to look beautiful and green, but it's like, who's telling us that that's what a beautiful lawn looks like? I mean, I think the culture tells us like that's what we need, but who said that it's ugly to have, dandelions in your yard? Or I think it's just what we grew up with. It's just, that's what we know. And so that's what we expect. And then that's what we want to portray to other people. So we look good and we fit in. And I get it. I think it's appealing to have a nice lawn. I think we personally probably have the ugliest yard on the block, I would say. I don't even know why, but if you look at it, not because of your mowing skills, you're really good at mowing and you keep it up really good, but we just have a hard time growing grass. I mean, it's practically all sand. But if you look in the backyard, it's sand because that's where our kids play and that's where they play baseball. And I feel like they're outside so much. And we know this now. We didn't know this in the 80s and 90s, really. You didn't know that fertilizer was bad the way we know it is now. I think it was in the 90s where the cases of cancer started rising. So it is our obligation now that we do know to keep it away from our kids at least. And so I'd rather have them playing outside, getting all dirty and not have loads of chemicals coming on them. Yeah, it might look ugly to us, but they don't know any different. They could care less what the lawn looks like as long as it's a big space. And so I know what she's talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it looks like here I'm looking at I think it's the NIH National Institute of Health website, a study on there about atrazine exposure and reproductive dysfunction. And so this, there's definitely legitimacy to this in what I'm seeing here. It's saying that these chemicals target the neuroendocrine system, which is composed of organs throughout the body that work alongside the central nervous system to regulate biological processes. It says that these endocrine disrupting chemicals are exogenous agents that alter endogenous hormone signaling pathways. So look, I don't pretend to know I know what all that means, but it does seem to conclude it with this. It says that this herbicide is reportedly to widely contaminate potable water supplies everywhere it is applied. As such, the European Union banned the use of atrazine in 2004. Currently, the United States Environmental Protection Agency regulates atrazine at 3 parts per billion in drinking water. So there's a lot to pull on, I think, on this thread. I did have a comment that did come in about this, I think, similarly. An anonymous in Massachusetts wrote this: "No, I just heard about hormones, birth control pills, etc. are in our public drinking water. Can you talk about that? What else is in our water supply? With folks taking the abortion pill, what else is in our public drinking water? You did a show on water filters, but maybe a quick review is needed. Can filters take the forever chemicals or the PFAS out of the public drinking water? If we dig our own wells, will that be safe to drink?" So Anonymous in Massachusetts also thinking about the drinking water and what's in there, right? And so this is another follow-up along these lines. We could do an entire show on this. We probably ought to dig into this and make it its own show. But Becky, any further comment on this at this point?
Yeah, there's a lot of studies saying that where we are getting the most exposed to these toxins is through our drinking water. Because think about it, if you're drinking glasses and glasses a day, especially everybody comes out, you need to drink, this many gallons of water a day to be healthy. And I'm lucky if I get in 2 glasses some days, you know what I mean? And there's a lot of pressure to drink water. And then once you start learning about what's in your water, then it kind of is pretty eye-opening to see what in the world are we being fed through our water. So yeah, it's exactly right what the caller said, or the email said. You are getting the birth control pills. I mean, if people are, excreting that out, I mean, it's going somewhere. We recycle our water, as gross as that is, but we do. And, miscarriages, abortions, I mean, it's all being dumped into our water, and then you have these herbicides and pesticides. So yeah, this is a whole show because I won't go into it too much, but it's fascinating because there are, huge water facilities that they have a whole filtration process, but what comes out is bleached water. So they're going through and they're just bleaching your water basically to keep levels of bacteria down and low, and it's really gross. And so there are some websites out there. I think it might be EWG. They might have this, but you can just search it. Test my city's water, and it shows you what your city is, where they are, and like worst or best water quality. If you're in city water, I mean, we're on well water, so it's a little bit different. So we actually had our water independently tested, which is, I think, really important if you do have well water, because you want to know what's contaminating it. And that way you don't have fluoride, you don't have the stuff that the government's putting in your well water, or as to what they're putting in the city water, which is a ton. And why would they even put that hormone that Joanne mentioned, that hormone disruptor? Well, I don't even know why that would be in there, maybe to stop fungus or something growing in the water. But all that to say, there are some great ways to filter your water. And I think that's a really important topic to kind of eventually talk about, and just simple ways to clean up your water, because that is one of the biggest ways. Studies are now saying that we are getting, hormone disruptors, the forever chemicals, and that can all be filtered out. So yeah, there's hope.
Yeah, seems very important. So yeah, maybe we'll even dig into that one next week. But following up again on survey responses, we asked, does it matter to you if pesticides were used in growing your produce? And almost everyone said yes, some emphatically so. Anonymous in Florida said yes, even organic produce can have pesticides, so cleaning the produce is very important. So Becky, I wanted to ask you about that. I didn't know that. I thought organic produce, part of what made it organic was that it didn't use pesticides. So even organic produce can have pesticides on it, and we need to be aware of that. How does that work?
Yeah, I think they use less toxic pesticides, obviously, ones that have the least amount of effects on humans. But yeah, they do, because look, they have these huge farms. They have to find ways to control insects or whatever it is that they need to do. So they do use pesticides, but you can wash it off. I think that's why people think, oh, it's organic, I can just eat it. No, definitely wash it off. I think the main thing with organic that's helpful is that they're not using GMO products on those, plants and in those sprays. And so that's important. But yeah, that's why it's really good to just find your local farm, your local, farmer's market, and talk to the farmers, like, what do you guys use? How do you spray it? And a lot of places, they will use alternative methods. I think I had one down here. Like they'll do the companion planting or different like ways of irrigation or aerating the soil to minimize the need for pesticides and chemicals on their organic plants. So there are definitely alternatives out there. It's not a crazy thing, and it's not really hard to find. You just have to, ask and see what's out there.
Yeah, we had another listener that said that they said, I heard that kale and strawberries need the most pesticides, so we should wash those ones really well. Is that true? Are there certain ones that need more and that we should be aware of, even on a greater level? Becky, any thoughts?
Yeah, there's a list, especially when you have like softer fruits, and the pesticides are going to kind of leak in. If you have like the hard pumpkins and the squashes, you're not going to have an issue. You don't really need to buy those organic as much. But yeah, definitely soak in some vinegar, let them sit there, and the water looks pretty gross on the bottom. But yeah, definitely if you go and search, I think it's called like the Dirty Dozen, there's a lot of information out there on which plants and which fruits, contain the highest amount of pesticides, and you can go from there to see what to avoid.
All right. If you have a question or comment for the show today, it's a great time to call right now. 1-877-511-5483. That's 1-877-511-5483. We also got a bunch of comments and questions that came in via the survey today. We're going to get to those when we get back as well. Stay tuned.
This is Life News Radio. I'm Jim Anderson. Indiana is the first state to release abortion complication data from 2022. It doesn't look good for abortion. 1 death of both a mother and child, 58 surgeries, 4 blood transfusions, and 2 hospitalizations are listed among abortion complications, the vast number from chemical abortions. There has been no evidence to support abortion activists' claims that pro-life laws kill women. Iowa legislators are making good on their promise to create a new abortion ban. The bill has been introduced, and the special session created by Governor Kim Reynolds opens Tuesday. Despite new radical abortion measures, abortions are down in Vermont over 10%. Counting only in-state abortions, it's a 16% drop. The abortion industry had anticipated an increase in abortions. This is Life News Radio. Persecution around the world has manifested itself through the centuries, but it is worse today than ever before. Aid to the Church in Need and its donors have been there to help since 1947, never abandoning the church or her most vulnerable children. Will you stand up for your faith and accompany our brothers and sisters on their spiritual journey? Visit churchinneed.org. churchinneed.org. In other state news, a St. Louis, Missouri doctor wants to eliminate strong state abortion restrictions and is proposing abortion-friendly changes to the state's constitution. Maine is about to become a late-term abortion state. New legislation legalizes abortion up to birth. And Seattle King County prosecutors say Washington state does not recognize unborn victims of violence. Murder charges in the death of a 32-week pregnant mother last month list only 1 victim. For pro-life headlines delivered to your email address daily, sign up at lifenews.com. This has been Life News Radio.
Welcome back to The Simple Truth, Wholeness and Healing Monday. Jim and Becky Havens here. Our topic are pesticides. A problem. If you have a comment or question here in our final segment, give us a call, 1-877-511-5483. That's 1-877-511-5483. When we asked in the survey, are you concerned about the use of pesticides in your community? The vast majority said yes. These were some of the responses. Yes, mainly because of the animals eating our grass and plants that are covered with pesticides. They are food for other animals, and it becomes a vicious cycle of poisoning the food cycle. Another said, yes, there are many studies that show how harmful pesticides are to humans and animals, and I'm surprised in our day and age we haven't found something safer to use. Another said, we should be told by our individual community leaders. And another said, I need to use them at times to get a handle on ants, bugs, etc. I don't see them being overly used, so I'm not concerned. Becky, any thoughts on anything regarding pesticides in the community, any of the comments that were expressed here, anything you want to make sure to get in on this topic?
Yeah, I just feel that, if you have a good community that you're in and you feel concerned, and there was a point when, we were in Rochester and, every week in the summer, or maybe it's every 2 weeks, the guy comes and he sprays everybody's yard, and like everybody but us and I think our neighbors. And so we were like the oddballs, and we didn't have the most lush, beautiful yard, but it was still like green. And you know what I mean? I'm thinking, why are they doing that? What's the point of that? And I was tempted at one point to go and just knock on the doors and say like, hey, do you realize like there are, and all these people had dogs. So that was, where I was going to go with it. But how dangerous these chemicals are, and do you know there's other options? Like, would you guys be into trying something new? And I think I shared this with a few people. They're like, don't do that. That's super weird. And they're definitely not going to listen to you. And so maybe, I was thinking about it too much. But I had a concern for my kids. My kids were playing outside all the time. I had to bring them in for at least the rest of the day because it smelled and because it was, spraying onto our yard. And it's gross. And so that was my concern. I don't think I've ever even thought about it, before I had kids. So I get why people might not really be thinking about it, especially if they're not like walking around on their yard. But yeah, a good point with, the animals and gets into the food chain, because if they're spraying the grass and the cows are eating the grass and the chickens and all that, and it's in the meat, and then we're getting it that way. So we're not just getting it from the plants. We're getting it and we're getting it in our meat, what we eat every single day, and our water, and slowly over time it will begin to poison us. I mean, that's just what it is. I mean, they're not hiding that fact. And so it's crazy that, at least 10 countries have totally banned most of these harmful chemicals, and, and many years ago as well, but the US continues to go and stay strong with it, even aside from all the lawsuits that are on Monsanto and the issues with that and the issues with cancer. I mean, there are strong studies that connect, glyphosate with the Roundup and, millions of dollars they're paying out to these people. And yet nothing's changing. It reminds me of the Johnson & Johnson with the talc, like the baby powder, and the talc was laced with asbestos, and, babies are getting cancer, and women are getting cancer, in areas they should not be getting cancer. And it took years for them to pull that off and off the shelves. And it's like, what's going on? Like, why are we waiting so long? People are going to die. People are going to get ill. And so that's why it's up to us. So I'm passionate about stuff like this because I feel like it's unjust what's going on. And I feel like people deserve better. And so I feel like this is why I like to get this message out. And I think it's important to have a small space on Catholic radio, because what are the alternatives? It's kind of like the opposite end. It's usually like the very extreme liberal sides that are pro-abortion and pro-LGB, all that stuff. And they're pushing this stuff, and they got their Reiki and their New Age. And so we as Catholics, we want to kind of, get into the health space, but it's heavily, burdened with the left side and the extreme liberal side. And so I think it's important to have a space for us in this. And so it might sound weird, doing a show on pesticides, but like you said earlier, Jim, it's just a space to kind of, a forum to kind of talk about it and share what we know and share ways to kind of change little by little. That's just my thoughts on that.
Yeah. Well, we're here every Monday, Wholeness and Healing Monday. You can find us here 4 p.m. You can listen to the podcast as well. If you appreciate this in between, if you want to get more on this, these types of topics, you can go to Becky's website, safehavensmama.com, get those free resources there and much more. Also, if you want to reach out to us, if there's anything you want to suggest in terms of topic, you can do that in the morning emails, but you can also email us as well. You could shoot me an email, jimh@thestationofthecross.com. And we want to use this forum to bring forward topics that are worthy of discussion, kicking them around some and hopefully forming our intellects well, that we can sort through these things and really help one another in the process. So we appreciate everybody who responds to the survey, everybody who calls in, who's part of this forum, who's helping us to gain better understanding and keep moving more and more in the truth, so that we can navigate it in every way. This life that we're in, that is fraught with so much, that we can navigate it well by God's grace, and also with a truly well-formed intellect. So any other comments, questions for today's show? A few more came in. This is Deborah in Massachusetts. She said, organic foods and locally grown foods are less toxic, but are usually very expensive. How can we safely eat foods that are not from these sources? So I think she's asking, look, if we're priced out of the organic food, locally grown food market, we got to go to cheaper alternatives to food for us. Maybe, I don't know, Becky, you seem to have some experience with the produce at Aldi. That's probably some of the cheapest produce you can find. Can you go to Aldi, buy produce, and then what's the best way to handle that so that it's affordable and you're trying to not take in these pesticides as much as possible?
Yeah, I mean, there's only, Aldi is, they're good and they're bad. I don't know. We're trying to do the same thing. Keep costs down. We have a little garden that we're trying to grow some spinach and some arugula, just small little things. I mean, we had a condo and I think we were growing things on our porch. It was a strange little setup, but it yielded fruits and vegetables, just kind of what we needed. And I think that's a way you can do it. We've also utilized our local CSA shares, which are reasonably priced, and you get a different box every week or every month or whatever you choose to do. I think that's a really great way to avoid, the high costs of organic produce, and while supporting your local farms who are getting shut down. It's important to, support them, and it's a way to eat better. You can eat seasonably as well. And I don't know, that's kind of what we've done.
Mm-hmm. Yes, very good. And Anonymous here says, it seems to me that those who are so concerned about the environment should look at all the yard chemicals that are being overused in our neighborhoods. There have been no honeybees in my neighborhood for 3 years, and this year there are no crickets. We will all pay the price of tampering with ecological systems, keyword being systems. Becky, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's all connected. I don't want to go too far in one direction and scare people away, but I think there is, they have something they're trying to do, those systems out there, and I don't know exactly what it is, but we need to just do our small part and do what we can to change that in our own homes and communities the best that we can.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So let's do what we can. Stay faithful. Jesus and his Catholic Church are the real deal. Let's strive to live it to the full by the magisterial teachings of the Catholic Church in faith and morals. God loves us. He's given us this as a gift. Let's love him back. Let's listen to him. Let's obey the commandments out of love of him and all that he calls us to. Let's respond in love. God bless you.